everyone. Please feel free to keep eating or grab another out as you choose. There's restrooms right outside to the right if you need them. Thank you so much for attending our event today. We're really excited about this. We have a great group of panelists here to talk about how they were hired and just give a little bit more how their hiring processes work and ways that you can self the best possible candidate, whether you're applying for jobs or applying for internships, field experiences, you name it. So I'm going to briefly introduce them, and then we'll get going with questions. So, Ellen, if you want to.
Okay. All right. Oh.
I'm a second-year community health promotion student, and Ellen and I and our wonderful Student Senate committee, the Personal Development Committee, works to put this together. And, yeah.
Kristen. I'm going to introduce is Erica Bagstadt from Hennepin. An epidemiology concentration in 2005. She's worked in trials at the VA hospital and has been an infectious disease epidemiologist at Hennepin County for the past years, and she's currently responsible for hiring and supervising epidemiologists at Hennepin. Schiffman, MDH. She graduated here with the epidemiology program and has been at the Department of Health since 2011. She runs activities for both tick and mosquito-borne diseases in Minnesota, which include working with data, a variety of special projects and studies, and day-to-day oversight of vector-borne disease programs. And for all MDH, she's the supervisor of the Emerging Infections Unit at MDH. She earned her MPH in epidemiology from the U, and years at MDH, she's worked in a number of project areas, including vaccine preventable disease surveillance and improving infectious disease surveillance, and includes epidemiologists, 4 full-time health representatives, and 6 student workers.
It's Michelle Faison. She is with the Greater Twin Cities, and she has been responsible for hiring people for about 15 years, so she has a lot of experience. She's had a lot of interviews over those 15 years. Increased the human capacity at the ARC by 10% since starting there. And also we have Paul Lenander, who was the Human Services and Public Health Department at Hennepin County, and he's worked with different departments there, including child protection, and he currently is oversees contract management for children's services. Before we start getting into questions, I'll just have one more item of business. We're going to be passing out little note cards. Megan LaFontaine will be doing this. Introduce yourself a little bit more later as well. But if you have any questions or notes that you think of throughout the panel, please feel free to write them down, and we will be reserving some time at the end, about 15 minutes, with the panelists. So, and before you answer, just go ahead and give your name and organization one more time, and then feel free to give your answer. So, what are some behaviors that you have seen lead to success during the interview process? So, start first.
I'll start. I'm Paul Lenander from Hennepin County Human Services and Public Health Department, and I currently have a student from School of Public Health back there, PJ Mitchell. Excuse me. One of the big things that during the interview process that I always think is important is just kind of the first impression that you make. I think that when you're looking professional, you have a certain sense of formality and to express yourself professionally, use good eye contact. If anyone asks the question, do you doing ... never say no. Say, do I have relates to that by, because when you say you don't have that experience, it's an immediate, you don't have anything else to say. A lot of interview potential hires, we have open open-ended questions about different scenarios, and we're really looking for critical thinking and people to come up with solutions for problems and being able to understand kind of a complex scenario and be able to kind of move forward and kind of what the hire to be like when you're working with them in a working situation.
Department of Health. I agree with everything Paul just said. Some other behaviors that I have found particularly attractive in candidates is when someone has thoroughly reviewed the information, the position description, and has questions for us. You know, you can tell again that they've critically thought about how they would fit into this position, what they would bring to the position. But ask us, you know, just even simple questions to kind of keep dialogue going. One piece I add is being have experience that exactly matches is great, but even people who have been extremely impressed with and hired in the past have had experience that leads me to think they're hardworking. They pick up quickly. You know, one of my favorite hires ever has experience in daycare, and when I was looking at her, you'd think infectious diseases daycare. Well, these guys will tell you that's where we get 90% of our care from daycares. But also, you know, people that work hard aren't going to go take care of 2-year-olds. That to me shows a hard-working person. So it's not necessarily professional experience or internship experience in public health related to that, because a lot of those customer service, food service positions actually have a lot of relevance with public health, because that's a lot of times our clientele. So I think being able to relate even jobs relate to how your professional position.
Hi, Eric. Kind of build on what Paul and Kathy said. I think a really big part too is just coming in and showing some enthusiasm. I know, you know, people when they're going for job interviews. I mean, I'm having to sit up and talk into a microphone. So if you can kind of take that anxiety or a little bit of the nervousness you have and sort of funnel being excited or enthusiastic about the job, I think that's really important, just to see that, you know, you have an interest in what you're, you know, coming to speak with us. And then I think the big one is just having some questions about the position, even if it's just one question, just kind of shows that you've really thought about the position. You've, you know, really thought about what you could bring to the table, what, you know, maybe you have a question about how the current who was in that position before you, you know, maybe you can think about, you know, how job or questions about that. So I think just having some pre-questions is a really good thing to have on hand.
To add to this, so we'll pass for the next question.
My name is and I'm with the Our Greater Twin Cities, and I would echo everything that our panelists have already said. One thing that I think makes a huge difference that a lot of students often forget to include are their strengths, and really making sure that if you've done any formal type of strengths work, which I know University of Minnesota has incorporated with freshmen a few years ago, StrengthsFinder is really including that type of information on your resume. A lot of organizations are strengths-based. We're looking for particular individuals, so we can really ask some of those questions and how can you add to our teams and what can you bring that's really unique about you, instead of just having, you know, just experience.
Okay. Second question for the panel is, how important are cover letters?
I'll start this time. So, Schiffman, Health Department. I really like cover letters, especially now as resumes have to always be uploaded into those systems. And so any form or other things that you do to try to highlight things on your resume, a lot of times get erased when they go through those kind of systems. Having a cover letter also more of your personality back into your application. And it's a good way to kind of get a better idea, you know, what you're about. And I think I have a whole stack of people to bring in for an interview if they also have a cover letter. So then you can find a little more about them.
Cover letters in many cases will make or break a particular candidate. They know a lot about your writing style, how you think, important to you, also how you construct your thoughts, and how you really convey the message that you are wanting to convey to a potential employer. And you can't always pick that up on a resume, because that's past experience, where the cover letter is really more of this is where you're wanting to go in the future. And so that really gives us a great insight into where you see you growing and where you're wanting to kind of expand yourself, both from a professional as well as from a skill set level.
I'll just analyst said, I think the cover letter is really critical. We had a summer intern position for an epidemiologist, and I think I had a stack of 40 applications, and that was leaving people out. If you didn't spend the time to write I'm not going to do an interview, you know, it shows that you've spent the time, you care, and you just had the time to write that cover letter. And I think a lot of, you know, things you fill out, it's just kind of listing your experience and things like that. Your cover letter is your chance to kind of shine and sort of include something, you know, maybe interesting about yourself, and also to show that you're good at communicating and you can do written communication.
Well edited, because definitely be a mitigating factor.
Yeah, I just recently went through a hiring process where I hired 3 people, 57 initial candidates that I had to weed through, and there's just no way that you can go through that many without just kind of, you know, going through quickly, making some check marks. And I agree, you know, make sure things are spelled correctly, make a punctuation is correct, and, you know, be formed to the of being professional.
Thank you. Next question we have, what questions do you typically ask in an interview? Do you have go-to questions that you use every day that kind of make or break the interview?
We, a lot of times, will do scenarios that we can make sure that people can kind of, you know, it's not going to be yes and no questions. It's going to be things people have to think about, things have to use some problem-solving skills to be able to use. Several in government agencies, and so you have to talk about diversity. You have to talk about what on diversity are and how you value diversity. So you want to make sure you've thought about that.
Yeah, I think actually we do use a standard set of questions for all people we interview. Essentially, we go through a process when we do our interviews of scoring each applicant and then possibly doing a second round and scoring again. So, you know, there is some, I want structure and formality that's consistent among all of the different interviews. And there are certainly skills-based questions, you know, what program have you done? Describe your experience with data analysis, you know, those of very skill-based questions. Some questions asked that we try to get at judgment. How would you approach this condition? And it's one of those, like, we're going to put you in a semi-awkward position. There's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, but we want to get a sense of how you think through and problem solve. And we always ask kind of the standard questions about individual versus teamwork style, strengths, weaknesses. And many of our positions, we might be looking for someone who's a little bit more independent worker or someone who's going to be working on a team. That there's, again, no right or wrong. People say I'm both, but we might be looking for a certain type of candidate depending on what kind of work you're going to be doing.
Just thinking about when I interviewed for jobs in public health, we love to give people scenarios. So I think we get some sort of a scenario. In infectious disease, I remember I interviewed, they gave me a situation where I have a foodborne outbreak and 2 pertussis cases, and then I get a bacterial meningitis, and how am I going to prioritize what I'm doing? And I'm thinking, oh, I don't know a lot about all these diseases. So I think it's okay to also, you know, be a little creative and just try and do your best. But public health with interviewing, we love to give people scenarios, and, you know, just you can show that you've got critical thinking skills and you can think through a scenario.
That is one of the first questions we usually ask is kind of, well, tell us a little bit about yourself, or tell us about your background as it relates relates to public health or whatever. And it's kind of, I think it's really good if you have sort of a little, I think they used to call them elevator speeches, where you could, you know, talk about yourself, kind of give your story in like a 2-minute summary, because it's interesting, and I know people get nervous and things, but some people really can't do that very well. And so it's nice if you can actually do that little summary and yeah, tell us about yourself.
Also figure out why you want to work for that particular organization or for that particular position, because if I don't figure out why you're passionate about this, then I'm going to have questions about your longevity. Are you going to be here for a year or two and then you're going to move on to something bigger or brighter, or really, really connected to this for a professional reason, for a personal reason, and what can we do then to really make sure that all we're going in you, that we get a return on that.
You know, when you get a question about, you know, different things that you might know about or you don't have experience with, don't pretend you know about something you don't know about, but talk about how you'll get that information, how you'll figure out the information you need, what do you think is the information that you're going to need, and how you will eventually solve that problem, and what are the other resources that you will be able to answer that question.
Along the lines of making the other behaviors that you would recommend students never, like in an interview or when you're first meeting them? Well, yeah, actually, of 3 positions that I just hired for, there was one person who did about everything that you don't want to do when you want to get hired. He worked in the agency, and I had actually met in a social situation one time. He kind of, there was going to be some, one that, he did in his chances of getting the job. He was using really inappropriate humor. His policy, like, be back in the chair like this, putting legs up, and everybody was going, so never do any of those things. So.
Don't be about early, but don't be 15 minutes early sitting in the lobby thinking that we're going to go get you in those 15 minutes. Parents with. These are things that have happened. I don't want to meet your father when we do an interview. Well, try to speak like an intelligent professional. I'm not your peer. I am potentially your supervisor. And the other thing is, as I said earlier, with what's impressive with interviews, dress professionally. You are showing up for a job interview, even if it's a student worker position. Dress professionally. Dress like they say, for the job that you want.
I don't think quite like that, but I think the one thing I've noticed is just making contact. Like, I think sometimes people get nervous or, sort of looking all over the room. So I think if you can, gain like a normal amount of eye contact and just on your face too, and just trying to seem as relaxed as you can is helpful.
Can I add to that? I just had one and I forgot it. You go and then come back to me.
I would probably add, check your body language. You kind of mentioned the leaning back. The number of times I've said, can you please spit out your gum? Because throughout your interview, that is absolutely insane. A number of times where you want to, and you don't tell me that you did it, and so I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is not the same person that sent me, because this is a completely different resume. And so simple things like that you might not think would really throw an interviewer off, but it does, because I start to question, okay, which is the real resume now? Because what is accurate and what's not accurate? And sometimes it's just completely reforming and those kind of things, but they can make a huge difference. I think my favorite pet peeve is when to follow up with someone for an interview and on their resume and in their cover letter, no email and no phone number. It's kind of hard to, and so literally they never even made it to the interview process.
Okay, sometimes people will bring things along with them to the interview, like, you know, if you're probably going to have a purse, or if you're from school, you might have your backpack or whatever. Don't just like throw it on the table when you get into the interview room, you know, set it down. I interviewed someone once who had a fake, like a bag, a completely empty bag, but they just didn't want to show up to the interview empty-handed. But it's pretty obvious that the bag was empty, so like, don't use props. You know, if you want to, if it makes you a little more comfortable, I think to take notes in an interview, it doesn't look bad if you take out a notepad and you jotting down important things or jotting down questions. That's all really good. If you do bring stuff and you need to refer to it during the interview, I had someone take out a calendar that they had to like unwrinkle and like spread on the table. To like, don't do stuff like that. Be organized, be tidy. Yeah.
I have actually one more add. When you think about the job, interview about that job. That is off-putting when you're an employer and you're trying to hire for a position, hearing someone's 10-year aspiration. So this is kind of conveying to me as an employer, I'm actually really interested in your job. I'm interested in a foot in the door in this organization, and then I step right past you. So really remember the job that you're interviewing for, that I'm hiring for. You know, in 10 years from now, I'd like to be running this place. Well, that's great, but right now I am. So, you know, just keep in mind that you're interviewing for a position.
Question will be coming up, but it's related to this, is social media. You want to look out what you have on social media, because I actually did go and look up Facebook. I looked up, you know, different social media sites for people I interview, just to kind of see, you know, what they're doing and what's going on. I had anything directly that would have said to me, okay, I'm not going to hire this person, but just that's a possibility. Or, you know, lock up Facebook so no one can see it who's not your Facebook friend. So
That's a great point. You kind of mentioned it already, but how do the values of your organization impact the hiring process?
important, and that was something that I was going to mention. I think that things that I'm always impressed with is someone's gone on our website. If they know what our values, our mission is, you know, we do what we do, and I think that's very important. So I think if you want to go and read that and understand, you know, what the organization is about and kind of how you might fit into that and how your values match, that's something that really impresses me.
You know, generally we're hiring for certain projects in our unit, and a lot of information is out there on our website about a particular project. And when someone comes in and says, "Oh, I realize Cal system to you," that is very impressive. In government, you know, there are certain values of public service that I look for when hiring a candidate. You know, someone who is interested in the greater good, which certainly many people in public health are, but someone who can express why they're interested in public service as a career is important to me.
You know, it always impresses me when candidates come in and they say, hey, you know, I was reading on your website the values and the mission statement of Hennepin County, or I was trying to find more information about your epidemiology program. So I think just taking that time to do the research and kind of knowing what the values are before you come in is a good step.
Yeah, I think everyone has pretty much already, but yeah, that, you know, research ahead of time is good.
Okay, thank you. More question right now. Successful follow-up look like? Would you prefer a handwritten letter, maybe an email? What would that be in your case?
the letter, whether it's by email or whether it's handwritten, I think either type of acknowledgement is fine. And literally sooner the better. I think if I can 2, 3, 4 weeks later, it's really kind of a moot point. I really enjoy when people follow up with a phone call and say, I interviewed with you like 2 weeks ago. I haven't heard anything. I'm really interested in moving forward with this. I'm interested in scheduling an interview or a second interview, and really being very forthcoming, because that one shows me a lot of passion, and it really shows me that you're highly dedicated. You're not just looking at it as a way to get in the door or to somehow just find anything that is out there and available. I would ask the email, at least for us, a lot of times that decision is made within a couple days. We'll get a bunch of candidates, we'll hire, we'll wait a day or two, meet, and decide. So if you are sending a form, as lovely as that is, and I do save them too, as lovely as that is, you might actually have missed the time when we're deciding, and that could be, if we're dating between two people, it could be the make or break. The one I really encourage people to do is when you're writing follow-up emails before, you've submitted your resume and you're here, or afterwards, remember to be patient, remember to be polite. Times where I've actually written people on after an interview because I found them so high maintenance that they're, you kind of want to say, okay, back off, and you've given them, you've said, we're going to take a couple weeks to decide, but then you the next week and the next week and the next week. So maybe read those replies, look at the timeline and stay within their timeline when you are doing follow-up emails. But I do appreciate the follow-up emails.
And actually, I did get a personal letter a couple of weeks ago, and I found it really nice, but I agree that time-wise, it doesn't always work well. One of the things I think would urge you to, or you're meeting with a group of people, see if make sure you have the right name. I've had, people who are calling all over the place because they can't remember who they met with. So they're, it makes it really difficult for them to follow up. So I think if you get a card, make sure you get an address or a phone number, when in the interview, and make sure you call the people the right name, because that happened too, where people were calling me the wrong name. So.
As someone who has a name that has a lot of nicknames for it, don't assume that I want to be called any one of those nicknames. My name is Elizabeth. I go by Elizabeth, and I do not like it when people send me hey Liz, thanks for meeting with me. I told you that was my name. I are you.
Hi, my name is Megan LaFontaine Gallert, and I just wanted to introduce myself. So myself and my great colleagues, the director of the Career and Professional Development Center, Vic, he's in the back, Aaron, associate director. And we worked with Kristen and Ellen. I just want to thank them and the committee for all the great work, and then also the great panelists. A lot of ideas were mentioned. My role is really connecting all of you with employers. So I work in employer relations, I manage the field experience, press, and my experience is in student affairs, working with students, as well as a recruiter. So it's great, instead of me and Darren sharing this information, which we do, have all these great folks here in the front of the room that have the experience that they share today. I will things, there's discussion of scenario-based questions. That's something that our office can help answer and go over with you. How many people have heard of Interview Stream? Just raise your hands. A couple? Oh, all right. So that's something that we provide through our office, where you can actually access anywhere and view your own interview. So that's just an example of a resource that our office provides. And our goal is to, as some of the panelists have mentioned, Michelle, I believe you did, about strengths. It's really clearly seeing all the skills and passion, dedication, and strengths that we all know you have. We're trying to kind of I think, the age here of having you share that with the employers. We all know you have it, and our goal at the center is really to have you clearly communicate that and be well equipped. So when you do sit down and interview with these folks, you're well prepared. So that said, having a little more opportunity for engagement between this panel up here and people out in front of you, just leave it open for some questions. And I believe, Chris and Ellen, if you'd be so kind, maybe to collect some cards. I know some people prefer to write things down if they have questions. So I think we'll kind of start with questions, as you know, first from the audience. So does anyone have any questions and want to open it up to the panel?
One thing, and we didn't talk about this earlier, one thing I would tell people though is even if if you at first do not succeed, try again. Just because you've applied, just because you've interviewed, and don't say, oh, I'm not going to apply there again, I'm not going to apply with that person again because I didn't get it the first time around. It might have been an internal candidate, it might have been someone who really just for the position was better, but don't let that discourage you. As discouraging as that is, don't let it discourage you. Continue to have good don't burn bridges with someone just because they didn't hire you, because I know, I can tell you, when we go to hire, we do a lot and share resumes back and forth, and maybe there's someone who we really like, and we'll let the next person who's hiring know that. So don't let one over discourage you from going back to that organization again.
Sorry, I'll second that, because actually when I got my student job at the health department, Kathy interviewed me first and actually did not hire me for a position. I applied to a different one. And I always tell students that, especially with those student positions, just keep applying. And
Wow. I don't know that. So that's pretty ironic, both on the panel today. Kathy, thank you. Elizabeth, thank you for sharing that. I think our office would offer the same sentiment that you just never know who someone. So I think making that good first impression is really key as the panel communicating, and keep trying. If this is your passion and your area of interest, then you'll find a way. So I think we have a question in the back. Kate? Excuse me, what your question? And Kate, what year are you maybe, or what your program is?
I'm a second year PHAP student.
Okay, thanks. What are some weaknesses, or how do you answer the question of what are your weaknesses? That's a tough question, and
Sure. I think one of the things for when people can be honest and identify what their weaknesses are, but what they've gone to do to address weaknesses. I have a tough time being confrontational, but I work at making a list and being direct with people by listing off what my issues are. There are a lot of things that can be weakness, or we don't usually call them weaknesses, we call them challenges. And I always address them with how you've gone about to address them as well.
Sounds like really trying to, I think you shared earlier, share your problem solving or share your process. They're really just trying to figure out yes, your answer, but also your thought process behind it. So I think the idea of making a list of what you do to overcome your challenges is just an example of that. So thank you, Kate. Thank you.
One thing that I heard with that about what not to do in an interview, it's turn off your phone, make sure your phone's off, don't take phone calls during the interview.
Oh my God.
So that's important.
Thank you.
Maria. Hi. I'd really like to thank you for coming on behalf of Student Senate. And this question is for Kathy. You mentioned that, times the projection of asking of, oh, where do you see yourself? And you said, well, you should kind of be in the moment. But I've gone through interviews where they do ask, like, where would you like to be in 5 years? Would it be overzealous if you were to say something like a director?
Right. No, I think that if that's a fair question. I think that if saying to you, where would you like to see your career? To be very, I want to see people who want to grow in the organization and in the job. Where it concerns me is sometimes if we're hiring for, say, a student worker, what they really want to do is they want to be the epi right now. So they don't want to do the chart reviews, and they don't want to do, quite frankly, a lot of the scut work that we have our students do. So what I want them to say is, someday I want to be an epidemiologist. I'd love to work for your organization. Right now, I want to learn the brick, how you guys do your job. So it's really trying to take what aspirations you have, and we want people to grow in their position, but them to do the job that we're hiring them for at this time. And I think this sometimes is hard for new grads because a lot are getting hired for an entry-level position, but it might be entry-level now and you want to be able to grow with that position. And that is a fair question. If somebody says, where do you see yourself in 5 years? That is completely fair to say, this is what I want to do. It's that, right now, even if it's an entry-level job, I realize this is an entry-level job, but it's going to help me get to that place, and I need to learn this. So that's, it's part of, you want someone to grow with it. You don't want someone who's going to get hired, but this is really the job that they want to do. They want to do it, the other job right now. And look at where can you find your niche in that other job, and where can you have that really become your brand, where people seek you out because you are so good in that particular job that you become basically the trainer for everybody else within that job, because that will leverage you also to move forward within that organization, or decide you want to stay with that quote entry-level position, but because literally yourself up as a leader in that position, you then can almost in some aspects become a consultant, for your organization, for other organizations to look at you as trend setter. And that's really then how you build your brand and your reputation in whatever line of work you're wanting to go into.
Oh, I love going to say that. Our office, that's something that we definitely want to do and empower you to do, is to clearly communicate your skills and how you're unique. I think, to Kathy's point, I think it's communicating to hard work. So when I look at evaluations from field experiences from pre-sters, so the set supervisors, I see time again that students are hardworking. So I think it's fair and appropriate to demonstrate and share how you're going to be hardworking at the organization, no matter what position that you're applying for at the time. I think that's an okay thing to mention, if you that really is part of your brand and what you want to communicate. Are you cool?
No problem. First off, I just thank you for coming. And I also wanted to kind of have an idea of, as the field of public health is evolving, what technical skills and qualifications do you guys foresee being in high demand for applicants? I know a lot of us are first-year students, and we can develop our own competencies over the next year. What skills are you guys looking for in candidates?
Well, I mean, one skill that I look for in particular in the unit I supervise is heavy analysis skills. People who've worked with large data sets, people who are confident with SAS, are, really heavy data analysis and programming. Now, that changes depending on which group that you're applying for. That's something that our group looks at. Skill JS is something, JS and geocoding is becoming more and more commonplace. One way to try to figure this out a little bit, if you're applying for a certain position or you're applying for a certain place, is we operate sometimes off of federal grants, and federal grants are out there for posting, they're open posted, so you can read the grant requirements and your skills with the grants that we're working off of. And it's also look for people who will fit well with the rest of our team. You know, and in general, in public health, again, I feel like it's kind of this is an easy thing for us to find. People who are engaged in the process, they want to, again, go into public service as a passion. There's some of the attributes we look for, as well as the skills are really a lot of analysis skills.
Having a conversation about this up here as we ready to start, in government in general, we've kind of swing back from, we had a few years of no hiring and of a lot of people, you know, not coming new in the agency, and we also have a population that is heavy closer to retirement. So if you're interested in working in public service, it's probably a good time to get into public service, because, you know, I know in Hennepin County, I think it's something like 40% of the workforce is within 7 years of retirement. So, you know, in HSPHD at Hennepin County, there are 3,500 employees, and it's a large agency. So there's going to be a lot of room for hiring, a lot of room for growing, and I think, you know, I agree with, you know, with skills. I think analysis. We are really looking at how to improve what we do, to be able to look at best practices, to be able to look at what we have and really have them grow. So.
And I think you can do to really focus on your problem-solving skills and to have really good examples of where you've used them, what your role has been on a team. The number of times I've asked students, like, can you tell me in a team of 5 what your role is and why you select your role? The number of individuals who can't answer that question really makes me, they know who they are. Do they know how they can meld with the team, and how they can seek out information, and how they can make sure that we're operating as a cohesive unit, which is so important to make sure that we're able to get our goals and objectives accomplished. The other thing I would also mention is anything that you can do to build your online resume. I mentioned that when we get to the point where we're interested in hiring people, most checked in LinkedIn accounts and Facebook and anything that I can see that you maybe not share in an interview that makes me want to know more is going to put you to the higher aspect of getting selected. I only see a small portion of your potential in an interview, and if I can see other things that you have done through that research that I've done, that will help you versus I look at someone's LinkedIn, there's no information.
I was actually going to say problem-solving skills, kind of general problem-solving type skills. GS is one that's just a huge thing right now. But anything that you can have that kind of makes you unique, and even if you don't have you're not an expert in something, the fact that you've been exposed to it, that you kind of know how to find more information, or just being good at sort of selling your skills in a variety of different ways.
Is really hot right now, and at Hennepin County, we actually use FDSS for data analysis. So I think just having any data analysis experience is helpful. And then I also just an ability to be willing to project, which was do a survey, and just I think showing that you're willing to work with SurveyMonkey, MailChimp, things like that. Just kind of your willingness.
We've had a number of new hires who have a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of Spanish in college, and they're now trying to regain and relearn some of that. If you have language, practice it, keep it current, because that is another huge. If we're deciding between 2 candidates, and even if you think it's an irrelevant language, we've had outbreaks where we've had to deal with completely different, languages. And as a student, quite frankly, a lot of our student workers that have language skills get a lot of really cool opportunities because they can Spanish or Mandarin or Mandingo. I cannot even tell you how many different languages we use in any given year. So if you have language experience, try to keep it current. end?
For me, I'm busy as a manager, and so I've got a lot of stuff going. And so if I can see an indication that someone's a bit of a starter, they're able to take a little bit of information and kind of run with it and research things and kind of figure out how to get things done, that is so helpful for me. There's no difficult than someone who needs to be watched over with every single step of process, and those are people that I really are not going to want to work for me. So.
Again, thank you, and great responses. So, two things I think about that we communicate in our office is having a resume that kind of as tedious as it sounds, documents and records most of your experiences that you can just pull from for different opportunities. But with that, you're able to keep track of when you've used SPSS and how you used it, and how you went above and beyond the work in your courses that may require that. Also, I think a key part of that too is something I want to add is reflection and taking time for that. And I think that's something that contributes then to your brand. If you're able to pull some stuff and look at your experience and see strengths, those are two key things I think our office would want to share with you. So, let's see. Questions, and we can go to no cards.
Hi. If you could just go through and say, like, check LinkedIn. I've, never made a LinkedIn account, so I don't know, how important it is to start working on that.
Working on it.
I would. Our office would definitely agree with that. Panelists?
Not only check LinkedIn, I usually recommend to any intern that I work with to actually do an online reference for you, where I can comment about what you have done and the difference you've made. Because it helps me a lot, because obviously everybody likes to brag about themselves, but if I have someone else who can maybe validate my own thoughts and opinions because you comment on your work, that is huge. It's basically doing reference checks for me.
I think I better start. But it's a good idea to have a profile on there.
Yeah, I agree. I think wearing kind of field experience as well as employer relations. So for field experience, we're looking at providing more resources to all of you of how to, when you're doing your field experiences, how to kind of maximize that. And one of the things would be supervisor about possibly having them include on LinkedIn for you. I love that idea. And we have a question way in the back. Yeah. Okay, questions?
I'm just wanted to ask about people ask about the skills that you are looking for. Sometimes that I feel like personality is kind of hard to show during the interview, and I'm just even though you check about like LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever, try to figure out if this person is a good team player. But I was just wondering that in such a short period of time, from your perspective, HR, because you don't want a high turnover rate, so how do you feel and the personality, and how do you see that? I know for the entry level job, that usually how long do you expect the student to, because that will be out of the school, so how long you guys going to expect that the student can stay in the job, like 2 years, and will they something like that, like what's your perspective?
Sometimes it's a gut feeling, and that it's just kind of a connection that you have and kind of how people are presenting themselves. But I think if you're asked a question about like how you have been a player or something like that, just use experiences. Say in school, I was a team, and kind of how my experience in being on a team and kind of what I thought were values of being being on a team. And that's an opinion on how you seem to value teams and kind of what you might be as far as a role on a team. This position is different. I mean, I think that some positions I hire for, they're limited, and I know, especially with the students, there'll be a time-limited thing, and it's fine. There are positions that I hire for, which I'm hoping are going to be long-term, and I'm not going to have to hire for those for a long time. It just really kind of depends on the position.
And an interview is a really difficult thing. I will tell you, there are some people where I was like, I don't really know what I think of their personality. I turn out, I love them. There are people that I've loved their personality in the interview, and when I've hired them, I have not been so thrilled with their personality. So I think it is really, that is a good question, because it's not, it is, the most you can do is get a gut feeling about the person, not a really accurate assessment of who they are. We certainly can't determine that. So I think going back to the first impressions, presenting yourself professionally, trying to put your best foot forward, that's really the only opportunity we have to assess your personality. Regarding entry level positions, there are some, again, time limited positions in our unit, student worker positions, which do end after a couple of years. A lot of times, the staff positions, the full-time staff positions, are actually, we have the person grow with. So we're looking for them to do a certain work for a year or two, but then in a couple of years, we add more responsibility, we change the classification. So, sometimes we want a person to grow with the job. We're not just hiring them for one singular job. And I don't want people to get hung up on that. It's just, when you're in the process of hiring for a job and someone you can tell is just not interested in the kind of work that they're going to be doing initially, it is an off-putting thing. So I always kind of, again, want someone who's going to grow with the job, but not walk into it thinking, this is beneath me, it's not what I want to be doing.
And I think it's who you are and what is really important to you versus giving the answer you think we want to hear kind of thing. I know there's always a lot of people who think they have to be the leader or the one in charge, and every team needs that, but you also need to have people that are the dot the I's and cross the T's. I'm always asked, well, what is your role on the team? And I never want to be the leader. I've seen that. I don't want it. I like to cross the I's, dot T's, and flip it around and make sure not only are we achieving our goals, we've exceeded it by 5% or 10%. Details person, and I own that. And everybody that knows me knows, you want a big picture thing, do not go to Michelle, because you will not get it. She'll tell you what color to be coloring your grass. So it's okay to own that, and it's okay to say, I wish I was that, and I'm hoping this opportunity will give me the chance to really put myself in a new light and take on some of those things I've never had the opportunity to do and learn. But really own who you are, because you're not going to be a fit for all jobs. And to force yourself to be that is going to just make you miserable, and then it's eventually going to not be a good fit for your employer, and then you've got two unhappy people instead of no unhappy people.
Okay, I think we're going to have to stop it there for questions. And I'm thinking with that people wrote down, we can have some form of communication back to the group here. I'm just loud here of how we can make that work. But maybe Victor.
Thank you so much. You gave us such great advice. We're so thankful for you to share your expertise with us as we're looking for jobs and internships. So we'll be sending out an evaluation actually for this event, and we would love your feedback. And if you have additional questions for the panelists, we can certainly pass those along. I also kind of want some input from you on future events. If there's any certain topics that you would like us to for this spring. Please feel free to indicate that. But as mentioned, as a follow-up to this, next week, next Wednesday, 20th, here in Mayo, in the Mayo Auditorium, from 12:30, they are doing an In the Weeds career workshop. We go over and follow up with some of the things that the panelists talked about today. Also are doing one on Monday, November 9th, on resumes and CVs, and on Wednesday, November 4th, one on time management, and November 18th, networking and social media, and on Friday, October 19th, the field experience, and October 26th, to emotional intelligence. Sorry, those are really out of order, but we will send those to you, actually in order. So give a round of applause one more time for the panelists, and thank you so much for coming.